Welcome to Unpack the NEWMAC, where we dive into the inner workings of the conference, the stories behind the stats, and the prestigious awards that make the NEWMAC a powerhouse in Division III. We'll celebrate the academic excellence of our student athletes, the incredible leadership of our coaches and administrators, and break down the path to becoming national champions. It's a lot to unpack, and we're here to do it. It's time to unpack the NEWMAC.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Unpack the NEWMAC. Today's episode is a special one as we celebrate National Girls and Women in Sports Day, which is an annual observance held during the first week of February to recognize the accomplishments of girls and women in athletics, to honor the progress towards equity, and to acknowledge the advocacy and work that continues. As we enter March, we're also celebrating Women's History Month. So I'm really excited to be joined by a wonderful group of our leaders in the NEWMAC. Nationally, women hold only about 1/4 of athletic director positions across the NCAA. Even in Division III, which leads the way, women still only make up about 1/3 of the roles. But here in the NEWMAC, we are 7 out of our 12 schools are led by women. So today we are joined by Stephanie Smurl of Emerson College, Andrea Ricketts-Preston of Mount Holyoke College, Kristen Hughes of Smith College, Bethany Ellis of Wellesley College, Lisa Yanesh of Wheaton College, she just corrected me, and Donna Harmon of WPI. Welcome, everybody.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
So it's been a fun time trying to get this group together, but we're finally here. So I want to hear from our group. Let's begin with your journeys. So each of you arrived at your leadership position through different paths, whether that was coaching, sports medicine, compliance, administration. I'd love for each of you to briefly share your journey. And at what moment did you realize that leadership was part of your path? And we will start with Steph.
Yeah, absolutely. Lindsay, thanks for getting this group together. I always enjoy when we're all sitting around the table chatting, whether it's in person or virtual. So thank you. So I had no idea what I wanted to do after I graduated, right? So I had no money, no job, and I decided to apply for every possible position that was out there. And I applied for a GA position where I was able to get my MBA and then also work in the athletic department as assistant women's soccer coach, and I worked in the sports information department. And it wasn't until then when I stepped on the other side of the sideline, right? So growing up playing soccer and then being able to step on the other side and realize what it meant to be a coach and to be a mentor, because I always had phenomenal mentors growing up, and especially through my college years. But it wasn't until I stepped on the other side that I realized how much of an impact the mentors had on my experience. And then I've never left higher ed athletics. And I think as I worked to continue to find my voice, that's when my leadership started to have words for it, because I was often asked, what makes you a good leader? I couldn't answer it because I felt like I always I did the right thing and people followed, right? And so it wasn't until I started to move through my career that I realized that I had worked pretty hard to get to where I was. There's a little bit of luck sprinkled in there as well, but just always wanting to make the best decision that I felt was for myself in that moment. And then things just kept leading. One thing, led to another. And like I said, I've never left higher ed athletics.
Amazing. So we will shoot it over to Andrea.
Yeah, thanks everyone for being here, and thanks Lindsay for the invitation. I have a little bit of a similar story. I grew up the youngest of 3, and sports had always been a part of my family. I had a grandfather who was a really successful wrestling coach, and I always heard stories about how he had mentored so many young men and was like a father figure to them. And I just kind of grew up hearing all of those things. And so having heard that, I just kind of wanted to emulate that, because I never grew up having met him. And so I played all the sports I could growing up in rural Illinois, which was pretty limited. And so when I got to college and was exposed to a few more, I wanted to be a part of everything. And so I minored in athletic training and played basketball at Luther College. And so as part of my athletic training minor program, I could be a part of everything. And so I became an honorary member of the women's soccer team and the men's soccer team and the softball team. And then got to be a student assistant coach for the volleyball team my senior year. And then I was a 4-year member of the basketball team. And when I went through the education program, fully intending on being a middle school teacher and coach, and then I got to my senior year and I'm like, I'm living my best life doing this thing in college and just being a part of so many teams and really enjoying it. And I didn't want to leave that atmosphere because I had been mentored by so many really strong women. And I think I have a little bit unique story because aside from my dad coaching me in my little league days, I had women coaches for every team I was ever a part of, from middle school all the way through college. And so high school volleyball, high school softball, high school basketball, I had women coaches. And even in a small town in Illinois, I think going to college, I recognized the uniqueness of that opportunity. And so by the time I was a senior in my spring year, student teaching was not required to complete my degree. And so having that knowledge, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to complete the student teaching experience in a 9th semester. I'm going to start applying for assistant coaching positions and see what happens. And now I'm 25 years out and have never left higher education, like Steph said. And so having that unique experience and being involved in that, I suppose I had a little bit of a foray into professional sports for 1 year with the Minnesota Lynx. And that was a whole different experience that we can talk about on another conversation. But like Steph said, I think that along that way, I could never really articulate what stood out about doing anything different. Yeah, I just always was a leader. People always came to me for advice or sought advice. Always made the right decisions and did the right thing. And people wanted to follow that and be around that. And I think I've continued to do that. And now I think in the situations that we're in, we're able to provide that leadership and that foresight. So really fortunate to have done that and have had really strong leaders to support that journey.
I love that you mentioned that you had female coaches, because for me growing up, I don't think I had a female coach until college. So that's amazing that you had that representation so early. Kristen, how about you?
Yeah, I grew up in a house where my dad was a football coach. So I feel like I spent most of my younger years either at football games with him or on a sideline. And I loved it. I loved the energy. I loved the contact of it. And it was kind of an unusual space for a little girl to kind of spend most of her afternoons. So that was kind of our kitchen table was probably the first original dry erase board. We would just sit there and write up plays. So that was just really fun. And then when I got into sports, obviously my dad was really involved. And I think what I remember most from him was his attitude towards girls sports at that time, which really were not very developed where I grew up. He treated it just like the boys. He started all the youth girls basketball programs in my town. And I distinctly remember him, really fighting for us to stop playing varsity girls basketball games at 4:00 in the afternoon and play them at 7:00 like the boys do. And so, from, up through 18 years old, just listening to him sort of fight for what was important in terms of how to run a girls sports program, that just sort of became, kind of part of my thinking. So he was a huge leader in my mind and really kind of opened my eyes to this whole world of sport. And, I had a really unusual journey to this particular chair. I never in a million years thought I would be an administrator. And if I'm being honest, I actually really still do not feel like an administrator. I feel like sort of like this glorified coach of all the coaches, minus the recruiting. So I guess maybe that's the perk. But, I spent almost 20 years coaching women's basketball at the Division III and the Division I level, and then made this bizarre jump to a high school athletic director position, which I also didn't want. and begrudgingly went to the interview and then ended up staying there for 10 years and like learned a ton and saw a very different side of athletics in a very different environment, and then came to Smith. So I've had a lot of different kinds of experiences, but the consistent thread through all of it has just been this energy that sports gives you, which is really what has kept me in it. I had great coaches in college that were definitely like some incredible role models to me. And, I think the thing with leadership is I think there's leaders and there's managers. And I think both exist in the world of athletics. And the people in my life that have been leaders have been the ones who really kind of speak to that emotion that I think goes into athletics, and I think makes even the hard moments really, really fun. So it honestly really doesn't feel like coming to work most days, because I think it's just a great group of people to be around and a great way to kind of spend a career.
For sure. How about Bethany?
So I always say my story started with like the cliche of the kid in the backyard shooting hoops by the barn. So another rural Illinois rooted person on the call. And, I started there and it took me to Yale, and that was, life-changing. And so I always believed in the power of sport to change lives. And that was kind of my route, that basketball took me to a new place that became so formative. And, I think that I started in a small town. I moved to New England. I've stayed in New England ever since. I wanted to be a coach. That was going to be my path, I thought. And I coached for a while. And I took a brief foray into the insurance and finance world and came running back to athletics very quickly. And I went back to Providence College at the time. They were adding the ops position for the women's basketball team. It was a new position. And so when they called me to come back into athletics, I took that as my sign, because it's really hard to leave and then come back. So that was one piece that I knew that this was kind of where I wanted to go. And then from there, I kind of had half a foot in the coaching world and half a foot in the administrative world, and took the administrative path and have since been at divisions 1, 2, and 3. In terms of this seat, I don't know. Like when I decided, I think I'm the type of person that each position has sort of presented itself. I haven't been like seeking it out or chasing it down. It's just been sort of timing and fit. And I think this position is no different. It was timing and fit. But I think my path went from coaching to briefly away from athletics and then quickly back. So.
Yeah, I don't blame you coming back after insurance and finance, but hey, someone loves it, I think. For those who are watching the podcast, you will notice that we have Trish Cronin just joined us from Clark University. Welcome to Trish. Trish, we're just kind of talking about your journey into your position and when you decided that was the path that you wanted to take. So we'll give you a few minutes to settle in, and we'll throw it over to Lisa.
Sure. Thank you. Ever since I grew up, sports was always a part of my life. I think mostly because of the folks that I was around. I had younger sisters, and we always played games, but we grew up with a bunch of boys. My cousins were boys, the neighbors were boys, and they were always out there playing. And that was sort of where we kind of got introduced and thrown into every sport you could think of. And it was just always a passion and fun. And then going to Wheaton, I actually had a tremendous student athlete experience. I'm very fortunate to be back here at my alma mater, which is always a unique experience, but I was able to be a 3-sport athlete here and absolutely loved it. Similar to, I think it was Andrea mentioned that I never had a female coach, a woman coach until I was a senior in college. So I had always grown up with male administrators, male coaches. Everybody in my life was in that space. And I thought that really kind of changed my ideal of where I wanted to go. And I really felt the passion for coaching came from that, and seeing her in that position. It got excited about that. And I had a unique opportunity after I graduated to go to a all-girls prep school. And they gave me a lot of opportunities is besides math teacher and coaching, but also as a high school athletic director, which I never saw myself doing either. And then the other person that sort of inspired me to get into this space was I got my graduate degree at Springfield College. And at that time, Kathy Schweitzer was the athletic director. And again, that was the first female athletic director I had really seen in that space. And it sort of just got me thinking about, wow, this could be something I could see myself doing eventually. But again, coaching was my passion, and I was fortunate enough to go to Salve Regina and a lot of NEWMAC schools in this scenario. And coached for 8 years, and then got the opportunity to become an associate. And I really felt like that was my comfort zone and my space. And I felt like I really enjoyed the impact I had. I think similar to Kristen, I sort of see it as you're coaching people and you're coaching other coaches and other folks to sort of be the best version of themselves. And I feel like that's where I've gotten that passion without the recruiting, which I think is awesome. I think that's a huge piece of it. And I've been fortunate enough to get this position this year as the interim director, and I'm absolutely loving the opportunity here. And it's still a work in progress, as I like to say, where the leadership and piece of this is going to go. So I'm very thankful for my opportunities.
We're certainly glad to see you in that role. We will throw it to Donna from WPI.
Thank you. And thanks for this opportunity to sit down together and share these stories. We've been in the room together, but it's fun to learn these different paths that people have taken. So I'm a little bit older than the group. And so growing up, there actually weren't a lot of youth sport opportunities for me. And so I had a father who was involved heavily in youth sport, but for the boys, because that's what was at the time. And I had an older brother. That's one of the best older brothers a younger sister could have. So I got to tag along, and I got to do all the sports with them and be a part of those teams and keep the scoring books and get to practice every day and do all of that until the one sport growing up at 9 years old was soccer, and that was it. And then boom, you get right into junior high. And the irony is, once I got into school, I did have all female coaches doing volleyball, basketball, track, and that carried through high school. But it didn't always register to me that there was a difference between, like, oh, all of a sudden now I have all these women until I sat here on this call now. But I feel very fortunate to have that. So thankfully, playing a couple of different sports, settled on basketball, got a scholarship to Bellarmine College, was able to play 4 years of basketball down there. Had a great experience, got my business degree, and I went out into the real world for 5 years and did some business. I was a bank auditor and a store auditor, which is not as fun as it sounds either. It was very interesting, and I knew I did not want to do that. And so I had a moment about 3 years out where I was like, what do I really want to do? This is not my passion. I'm not excited about numbers and doing audits. And so I thought long and hard about how much I love sport and I love what's involved with it, but I knew I didn't want to be a coach. I just didn't have that passion for a sideline, but I kind of knew that I really wanted to be involved in sport. And that's where I had never seen a woman as an athletic director, associate athletic director, or behind the scenes. And I knew I'm more of a behind the scenes person. I really love putting things in place for others to be able to shine and really follow their passion. So I got the opportunity to go to UMass Amherst. And when I was at UMass Amherst, so I am the NEWMAC baby from day one in college athletics. I started as a graduate assistant at Mount Holyoke under Lori Priest, who was a great mentor of mine, and really learned a lot in the time I was there. I was fortunate to get a job at Wellesley College for 9.5 years and work under, I wrote down some of the legends that I've had the chance to work with, Louise O'Neill. And then as I'm sitting in that room as an assistant and an athletic director in the conference meetings, again, the people that I got to sit in with are Lynn Oberbillig from Smith, Julie Serrero at MIT, Bridget Bellavini at Wellesley, Linda Moulton at Clark, and Candace Royer at MIT, some of the legends of college athletics, not just Division III, but all of college athletics, and got a great education as an assistant and an associate. day in and day out. And so I was fortunate that I was a part of being mentored by the Old Girl Network. We've always heard of the Old Boy Network, but I was very fortunate to have the Old Girl Network take care of me and help me and push me along. And then the job at WPI, again, in the NEWMAC came along 24 years ago, and I've been there ever since. But a great opportunity that there's been a lot of different people in the room. So when I think about leadership, I really learn from everybody on this call. I learn from the people that are no longer in the room. And I think it's an opportunity as a leader for myself. And I also learn a lot from my staff. I'm really, really fortunate to have some great people, great coaches around me and stay with me all these years. And we've really built something nice at WPI where we really love what we do. It's not always easy, but you can trust that the people there want to do their best and are trying to do the best with what they have on a day-to-day basis. And so that collective group approach and leadership piece for me, it makes my job easier. It doesn't mean that the job is always easy. There are those moments where you have to, as Kristen was talking about, you have to manage and you have to lead. And it's back and forth, but also coaching as well. And there's a lot of different hats that you have to wear. And that's where I feel like as a leader that flexibility to understand and know the difference. Sometimes you got to get out of people's ways in order to have them shine. And then there's other times where people need some guidance and direction in order to reach their best potential. And so that's where I really find it fortunate and love the job. It changes every day. And I'm really proud of the experience I've had through the NEWMAC and what it's given me.
Yeah, certainly never a dull day in college athletics, certainly. And I love that, the girls club. I think here in the NEWMAC, we have kind of an opportunity to create that for sure. Trish, you were supposed to go first, being the, alphabetically from Clark, but, we'll throw you in now. Go ahead.
Well, I saw that I was first up, so that's why I made sure I was a little bit tardy getting on this. We have some teams down in Florida and they needed some attention, so I needed to take care of that. It is sunny in Florida. Not that we're experiencing any of that up here in terms of what the ground looks like. I think my story is very similar to a lot of these people on here. Let me first say that I am very privileged to be working with these distinguished women, and I hold my head up very high when I say what conference I'm working with in and who I'm working with. So, I started off playing sports, and that's where my passion was. And while I didn't come from a sports family, they encouraged me and stood on the sidelines and applauded when I did well. And, I liked that a little bit. So it was easy to continue that path. And I did modestly well in high school. I came out of high school playing basketball, and man, oh man, I was going to go D1 and everything. But, as I tell people, I was a tall player in high school, and I was a 4'5" and had my back to the basket. And D1, they want you to dribble at my height, and I didn't know how to do that. I dribbled it off my feet every single time. So, that transition into college wasn't that great. And fortunately, I was picked up by a volleyball coach at Manatee Community College, and I ended up going up to Kentucky State, and finished out my career as a volleyball player, which was fantastic. But the pivotal point in my life, I was playing basketball at Manatee Community College, and I sprained my ankle. And it took me out of action for about 3 to 4 weeks, and I developed this relationship with the athletic training staff. And I was on a pre-med kind of trajectory, and noticed that, maybe I didn't have to do all that schoolwork and still do, a little bit in the medical field. So I kind of started ripping tape and doing stuff along that realm. So when I graduated out of Kentucky with my degree, I ended up visiting some relatives in Newport, Rhode Island, and took an athletic training job at Salve Regina, where I started my career, and I was there for quite a while. I was the head of sports medicine, and I was the SWA until someone else on this video came in, Lisa Yenish, and took that title away from me. So I've always had it out for her since that time. But you know, I knew at that point I liked being at the table. I liked being part of the decision. I liked people asking my opinion. I have a quiet opinion. I'm not the loud person in the room, but I do like to digest what people say. I do like to hear people's viewpoints. So I finished my career at Salve and thought, I'm done with this. I'm going to go to a school on Long Island and get my teaching degree and teach health biology. And I took a GA position at Dowling College, and so they would pay for my school. And while I was a GA in the athletic training room, things always seemed to happen for me. I don't know. I luck into things a lot. And they all of a sudden went from GA to assistant AD, director of sports medicine. And I was roped in again. Got my teaching degree, and there was a woman on staff, the associate director, Melody Cope. And, you know, she said, do you always want to be doing this at midnight and 11 o'clock at night, carrying people off the field? And, you know, maybe that wasn't the trajectory that I was looking for. So at that point, I started looking at, you know, how I could pivot into the administrative world. Ended up at Clark, because I wanted to get back up in the Northeast. And Linda Moulton hired me at Clark. She left. Sean Sullivan came in, and I was working as an assistant athletic trainer. He pulled me up to the associate level, and it was kind of this weird thing. So here I am, the associate athletic director, and you know, Sean's calling me in for a big meeting, and I'd have to go ask the head trainer, is it okay if I go up and talk to him? So it was kind of a weird kind of feeling. Sean left, and, you know, I was fortunate that my colleagues maybe saw a little potential in me and pushed me to take the position. Truth be told, if no one, you know, this is a cone of silence and no one tells anything on this, maybe it was a year or so, a little bit too early. But fortunately, you know, I've learned from some of the best, and I continue to learn from the best that, you know, you may not have the right answer the first go around, but as long as you listen and you engage, I think we all come around to the right answer. And I'm proud of the discussions that we have and the answers that we come to.
It's amazing. You know, each of you had such unique paths, but I think part of the thread that kind of weaves through all of them is that you had those mentors, and representation matters. You know, you all are in a situation where 7 of the 12 seats in an athletic director meeting are held by women, which is rare. So I would like to throw out to you, and you know, whoever wants to throw in an answer can throw in an answer, but what does it mean to you to be in a conference that is so well represented by women in leadership positions?
Well, I will say when I first took the job at Smith, I distinctly remember about like the next day after it had been announced, getting this incredibly welcoming letter from Bridget Belgivini, who was at Wellesley at the time. And it was sort of, it was a really, like the connection right away, and the way I felt like she welcomed me into the conference, it really set a tone for what the NEWMAC is all about. And certainly everyone that I met after that, Donna has been like that. When I was with, you know, working with Julie at MIT, like it was a group of people that I was instantly impressed by. I had a ton of respect for. If you spent any time in the room just listening to their conversations, you knew that. But also extremely welcoming. So like for me, honestly, like they modeled what I think should be happening across athletics. And so it was pretty easy to tell like early on just what a special conference this is, and certainly has its challenges, and we're all very unique schools. But in terms of like the kinds of people that you're sitting with and making some big decisions and trying to have these philosophical debates on, been a pretty impressive group. So I actually just feel incredibly fortunate to get work with all these people on this screen, and certainly at all the other institutions as well.
So, I mean, yeah, in short, it means the world to me, right? I mean, because I have been in places where I have been the only female voice, you know, in thinking about when I was getting my master's in my cohort, I was the only woman in my cohort. And I think there was about 20, 25 of us. So coming to this group, I really try not to take it for granted. I would say though, every time that I show up for NEWMAC meetings, every time all of us are all together, I'm like, oh, right, we're all like, we're the majority. And I think sometimes it is easy to take it for granted because it just feels like this is the way that the NEWMAC runs. So it means the world to me. I will say that I have had female coaches before. The opportunities that I had growing up, I had a lot of opportunities to participate in athletics. And then, going through school and having the mentors, they have been women, but I think it's when I notice it the most when I'm the only one in the room. So then, like I said, I show up to NEWMAC meetings. I'm like, yeah, this is how it normally is. But I try to not take it for granted when I come into these spaces and realize just how many female voices we have at the table.
So Steph, you mentioned, it's different when you're the majority versus being the minority. How do you all think that leadership would be different if the women were the minority?
Tough one to answer, I will say. And having been in the room the longest, it's been majority female. The NEWMAC was a women's only conference when it first started as the New 8 and invited men's into the conference, and then eventually became the NEWMAC. So I think there was always, for lack of a better word, a tone set right from the very beginning that, and it doesn't mean men are bad. I hope that's not going to come across here, but it's more about, I think, the tone was set of, we're going to be more collegial. We're going to figure out what works for not just the majority, but for everyone. And those compromises and those give and take. And the people that I listed before were very much about that. It was very much about, how can we help bring everybody along? How can we help each other in a very lonely chair? There's not too many people that really understand this chair that we sit in. And it doesn't mean that, you need somebody like a therapist or anything like that, but sometimes there's some really heartbreaking, difficult decisions that you have to make. And it's nice to call a colleague and be like, okay, how have you done this? If you've done this before, or what do you think? Or I'm really going through something here. Help me to just vent to somebody, and I think that's where it's really, really helpful to learn from others who are in the chair. We have very unique positions on our campuses. That's not like any other departments. We get judged by how we do outside of our campuses. The wins and losses. Are your programs representing your university well? There's very few places on our campus that have those same kind of pressures and difficulties of what we had to deal with. Dealing with parents on a regular basis. So getting a long way away from the question, I think what makes it great is that we do have people here that it's a conference that has been established by women, and what are the attributes that we wanted and have still stayed in the room to this day. And we have fabulous male athletic directors who are all on board with that as well, and just making sure that we're making the best decisions that we possibly can for the collective versus what is going to help me to win and be the best. I think we've really avoided a lot of that from our work.
So that was a good answer. You were worried about being a tough question, but it was a good answer. I think, each of you leads institutions with maybe different histories, very unique in your makeup. Some of you are all women's colleges. But I think everyone is focused on that emphasis of that student athlete, the holistic student athlete experience. And you are all privileged to be able to lead that group. When you think about the progress in women's athletics, what makes you the most proud?
Well,
I
I
mean,
mean, I just
oh,
go ahead.
go ahead, Kristen.
No, go. I went the last time. Go.
All right. I mean, as one of the youngest folks on the call, I mean, growing up, I mean, I referenced that I grew up in rural Illinois. And so when I was growing up, I didn't have access to an AU program that I could go to like there is now. Like there's an AU program at everyone's fingertips for basketball that's playing every weekend, travel team, whatnot. I look at my niece who's 17 and she's going to Louisville, she's going to Chicago, she's playing on a national schedule and she has access to this. And I'm really proud of that she has that opportunity and that experience. And I think back to the exposure and access that I had to even watch women's basketball on TV when I was growing up. It was Sunday. It was like the Big Ten game of the week on ESPN on Sunday. And if we were really lucky, there might be an SEC game right after that because it was like a really big game. Like Tennessee would be playing whoever the other like semi-okay team in the SEC was at the time. And so now, like I'm thinking last Tuesday, I watched Oklahoma play Tennessee. I watched Tennessee play 3 times last week, and they're on a 5-game losing streak, which is historic for Tennessee. I watched UConn play 4 times in the last 2 weeks. Yes, we're in New England, so that's not an anomaly that UConn is on TV. But I watched Notre Dame and Louisville play. I watched UCLA play USC. That is an out-of-market game, and that's just women's basketball. When we talk about the national viewership for volleyball, it's off the charts. And so, and that's just in a 35-year time frame from the time that I was entering high school until now. And so we're at a time right now where we have a professional league for women's hockey. We have a professional league for women's soccer. The inaugural game for the Boston Lakers CFC is on the 14th. New Kids on the Block are performing. Like, it's a huge deal. Mount Holyoke alum is the president of the club, so I'm very excited about that. And so we have a professional league for women's volleyball. We have professional leagues for so many things. WNBA is in a collective bargaining negotiation right now. And these are things that would have been unheard of, 20, 25 years ago. So I'm really, really proud of that progress. And yet we're still talking about gender equity in sports and college athletics. The president has invited people to the White House in a couple of weeks that includes one woman to commission to solve the problems of collegiate athletics. And he's invited Condoleezza Rice, to my knowledge, is the only woman on that panel, someone who has no immediate connection aside from being in the college football playoff. And so if we're really serious about solving some of these issues, then we're inviting different people to the table. And so those are we name some of those really great things. And then we name some of the things that are so obscenely obvious and disgraceful. And then we look at all of the things that are happening on our campus that we can cheer about and celebrate and really rally around. Having women in the director chair. I mean, we're a gender diverse women's college. That representation I see every day. In a million years, I would have never imagined myself being in this position at a single gendered institution. I've been at a co-ed institution my entire career. And yet when you talk about alignment and fit, like I feel very good about being where I am. We walk into a meeting and it's just empowerment. It's like the embodiment of empowerment. And so coming into these NEWMAC meetings, it's just so reflective of that with the group of women who are sitting here. And then I look at, the number twos and the number threes that also come along, and it's also represented by women in the majority. And so not only are male counterparts lifting women in their departments too, we're doing that as well. And so I'm super proud of all the progress. And then we have so many visible, obvious challenges that still exist. And so it's an exciting time and yet a challenging time as well.
Definitely. And I think you just answered two of my questions.
Sorry.
Points for you. But I think you also kind of segued into a question that I had, which was, like you said, so many of the twos and the threes in the department are also women, and you have an opportunity to mentor them. How do you intentionally mentor that, kind of next generation?
I don't know if I have any magic secrets, but I'm happy to jump in with what is important to me when I think about this. And that is, I want them to know that I believe in them and that I trust them. And that's like the core of what will hopefully build, all of their next steps professionally. So when I think about mentoring, those are the things that I seek to build and connect on, and hope they come away with a solid foundation of. That's my short answer on that.
So if someone came to you looking for advice, one piece of advice that you could offer to a woman who was looking to enter the role that you're in, what would that advice be?
The things I say are coach your personality. Internalize that, right? Coach your personality, be who you are, be true to yourself. And then I think, the alignment of where you work is important. I know that was mentioned a little bit. So I think where you find yourself is a really important thing to understand as you look forward. And then I always say, just be the kind of person that people think of when they're looking to fill jobs, right? Because we all talk all the time and we're always looking for recommendations for people for positions. And so if you put yourself in the position of being the type of person that other people are going to think about when they're looking to make a recommendation or looking to fill, those are the pieces that tap into.
Anybody else have any bits of advice?
I would just add to that, and similarly, is just be your authentic self and don't try to be somebody else. And don't be scared to take a chance, because you never know where it's going to lead. And until you try, and you're probably going to fail the first couple of times, and that's okay. But just keep getting up and keep working and listening to people and getting advice and guidance. But don't ever be afraid to take the chance.
I think adding on to that is that there's been studies that when women look at a job description, they read all the bullet points and there's one that they might not have experience in, and then they go, I don't think I'm qualified for it. And so there's what I try to say is, even if you don't have all of the bullet points, believe in yourself that you're going to learn it, you're going to get better at it, or you can hire somebody to be that bullet point in order to make you better as an athletic director and leader. That you don't have to be everything to everybody, but you can surround yourself with people who can help fill in your blind spots, your weaknesses, and also help you to magnify your strengths. And so more than anything, have the confidence that you can do it and go for it. And if you really are worried about something, trust yourself that you'll learn it.
So all of you obviously are maybe in different points of your journey. Some of you maybe are kind of early in your athletic director tenure, some of you more so. I think everyone wants to leave behind a legacy. What legacy do you hope to leave behind? Many, many years from now, when you're not in this role anymore, of course, you know.
I hope to leave behind an institution that shares the belief that athletics are the best laboratory for teaching any life experience, and that we have created or fostered a, competitive and rewarding environment for that to happen. That's and that all of the student athletes and the coaches knew that my role, my efforts were all designed at helping them to be successful.
I would say that I won't be missed, because then I've done my job to make sure that everybody else is ready to go, that the place continues on. It is a secret that sometimes they don't need us to get work done and to lead things, but that the place will be in good hands by good people wanting the best for the university, the student athletes. I think that's the best legacy that I hope to leave.
I think that old proverb is, leave it better than when you got there. I think if I can step aside and Clark is positioned in a better place than when I stepped in, I think that would make me happy. I think, I want people to think that I was fair. It's important to me that people think that I was fair and that I was equitable. I think I work very hard to make sure that that we're equitable with the things that I oversee. And I think that's really important to me, because on this call, when we're talking about gender and differences or whatnot, I want to leave it in a better place. And I want the women and the young men to feel that they were heard, valued, and that they grew. I don't think there's anything more rewarding than seeing a first year come in and then they walk across that stage and they're a different, more mature person, and they're ready to take on the world. And that's how I want to leave.
Yeah, Trish, I was just having that conversation with a colleague of mine about a favorite part of my job is seeing the student athlete development, right? And they come in these first years, they have their eyes wide open, and then, they don't know left from right. And they're a senior and they kind of got that chip on their shoulders, and they're able to look back and realize that, we held them accountable, right? I want that to be part of my legacy too, is that, we're going to support our student athletes and pick them up when they make a mistake. We're going to hold them accountable. I also would love for all of my student athletes to feel some amount of change and growth over the years that they were there, whether it's in facilities, whether it's additional resources. I want them to always be able to experience some type of, to be able to actually see the growth in my department and in my division when they look back after graduating.
I'll jump in here, and that the legacy I hope I leave is that everybody knows it was about the people. And that's obviously the student athletes is why we're all here. And everybody's mentioned that already, sort of start to finish, from the recruitment process when the PSA is walking around looking scared to death, and then coming back as alums and being that great connector to the current students. But even just as important is the staff. And wanting everybody to just have a passion for it, not only their education and their sport, but just this, to me, these aren't jobs, these are passions, and it shouldn't be work. If it's work to you, then I think you're missing the boat on what we're doing with this job and these fine kids that the student athletes that we're getting to mold every day and be a part of, and their energy keeping us young and excited. But I say that to my staff a lot. If this isn't a passion for you, then that's really what it should be about, in the people that you're surrounding yourself with. is the most important thing. I have the most tremendous staff, which trickles down to having tremendous athletes and students, and that permeates throughout the college. And I can't be more proud of that in my short time here in this role. So just the passion piece of this is huge.
All right, I think I'm the only one left. You know, I would hope that when I leave here, people felt like they had somebody who was in their corner, and who, you know, really valued them for who they were as people beyond just their jobs. But also that they were a part of creating this culture where we really valued competing at a very high level. And that it wasn't about banners and trophies, but it was about that level of success and showing up in big moments and how that changes how you walk into a room and how you carry yourself. And I hope that our student athletes feel that when they leave here.
I still didn't go, so I was going to sneak in there. I think that all of you said such great things, and the only thing that I have to say is I want our kid, the legacy that I hope to leave is that our kids feel celebrated and that they mattered, and the same thing for our staff too. But I like Donna's point. If you go away and everything goes as planned, then you've done your job.
You'll still be missed, though. You will. I'm going to test your lightning round skills now. We're kind of reaching the end here, but this is a first for me. I've never had this large of a group on the podcast, so it's exciting, but we're going to test your alphabetical skills here. So we're looking for kind of quick answers. First thing that comes to mind, and we'll go alphabetically. So Trish, you're on the hot seat first.
Make it easy. Make it easy.
They're easy, I promise. And then we'll jump to Steph and so on and so forth. So you guys will be ready to go. They'll be ready to go. First one, first sport you fell in love with.
Softball.
Soccer.
Softball.
Is it me? I've lost the order. Are we going alphabetical by name or school? I got dizzy.
By school. See, you failed the test.
Look, I just work at Smith. I don't go to Smith. Football was my answer, though.
Gymnastics was my first.
Baseball.
Football.
The best leadership advice you've ever received. Trish.
Go for it.
You belong.
You always have a choice. You may not like the choices, but you always have a choice.
Get thick skin.
Coach your personality.
Be authentic.
Be yourself.
I sense a common thread there. A female athlete who inspired you growing up.
Martina Navratilova.
Michelle Akers.
ADC.
I don't know. It's not like a female. I think a female role model, I would say more Pat Summitt. I'm not necessarily an athlete.
Still a good answer.
She was okay.
That steals my option B answer. I'm gonna go with Nadia Comaneci, and she was a little before my time, but the movie inspired me. So
I'm gonna go with that gymnastics.
yeah, I'm just sticking with the theme.
Yeah, I like it.
Dot Richardson.
Babe Dickinson Zaharias.
Look at you, Donna.
You went way back, Dawn.
I'm not that old though.
Wait, I'm not that old, but just learning about somebody who was so good in so many sports. Like just
It was the movie?
Yeah, exactly. It was the movie. I swear it was the movie.
Yeah.
I am proud to say I do know who that is, but only because my daughters have a Rebel Girls book, and she's one of
There you
those
Yep.
Girls, so.
Yep.
If you weren't in athletics, what would you be doing?
It's me, right? Clark, see? I'd be something in medicine.
Clarification, is this work or what else would you be doing?
Well, I guess you want to be on a beach somewhere and you could do that too. But yeah, I think
Okay.
profession.
Got
What
it.
would your profession be if it weren't athletics?
I mean, I don't know. I ask myself this often when I'm having some bad days. I'm like, what else would I be doing? I don't know. I probably an educator in a different setting.
I would probably be a middle school teacher.
Yeah, I would be in medicine.
I think I would probably be doing research, like developmental psych or maybe education policy, something in that realm.
Preschool teacher.
Entertainment field.
Can you be more specific, Donna?
Sure. If I had the money, I'd be a producer.
Okay.
If not, I would love to have been a director.
I thought you were going to say drummer.
Thought you were going to be a stand-up comedian.
No.
I do have to say, Lisa, when I first started coaching, I was coaching at LaSalle softball, and it was part-time. And to like kind of fill in the gaps, I was teaching preschool full-time, and it's not for the weak.
It is not.
Last one word that defines the NEWMAC. Back to C.
Can we go the other way? Isn't there a time where you reverse it?
I don't know how to do it that way. So
W?
You don't want to do that because then she's going to use your word, Trish.
All right. Premiere.
Wait, what did you say?
I don't know what I said.
Premiere, right?
Premiere.
That's my word. I'm sticking with it.
Good word.
All right. Powerful.
Elite.
Diverse.
Fun.
Collaborative.
Integrity.
Those were great words. All right, we are down to the final question.
But I thought that was it.
That's all right.
No, that was. I said we're getting to the end.
Okay.
Now we're at the end.
Okay.
Steph, stop
Plus the
rushing
puppy
me.
is behaving right now, so she can fit it in one
I
more
know.
question.
If anyone watching notices my screen was shaking, my dogs decided to wrestle right on the floor next to me. And like I said, they're crazy at night. Okay, so as we close, I want you to imagine that there's a young girl who is listening to this podcast. Maybe she just signed up for her first team. Maybe she's dreaming of being a coach. Maybe she doesn't see herself as a leader. What do you want her to know? And Trish, I will send it to Donna first because you're right. We have to be fair.
Have fun. Can't do any of this without it being fun.
I can't do backwards alphabetical. Lisa.
Don't be afraid to fail.
I think I'm up. I would say be really intentional about who you surround yourself with and make sure you pick people that have similar ambitions or beliefs in you and that bring those out of you.
I would say go in your space and work your tail off.
I'll just be more simple than that and say you can do it.
Yeah, I think it is always find the humor and never lose that chip on your shoulder and never diminish your ego.
Uh-oh, my turn again, right?
You had time, though. You had time.
I got it. I got it. I got the
You're
answer.
the closer, Trish. Come on.
I got my answer. I got my answer. I would say find a mentor. Find a woman or a man, and don't be afraid to ask questions. I think for me, and probably for many, there was this mentor who provided some piece of information, some guidance that we all took on as a challenge or whatnot. So I would say find a mentor, and for anybody who's listened to this, I would encourage them to email one of us, because I know that we do field questions quite a bit from young people. And I think each and every one of us would be happy to talk to somebody if they had questions about what we do.
Well,
I'd also just throw in, don't dim your own light. Like, really make sure you shine the way you're supposed to.
Great closing. Great closing. I know that you are all very busy on your campuses across, in all of your committees that you're doing. So I really want to thank you all for finding an hour to sit down and chat, and just giving us some great advice and great feedback. Hearing about your journeys was really enlightening. And just thank you for all of your leadership. Like I said, not just on your campus, but within our conference, across college athletics. As we celebrate National Girls and Women in Sports Day and Women's History Month, we just hope conversations like this remind us that the work of equity, opportunity, and representation happens every single day. And we hope that everyone continues to celebrate the women who compete, who coach, who lead, and who open doors for the next generation. So I want to thank you all for joining me, and I hope all of our listeners enjoyed this special episode of Unpack the NEWMAC.